Thank you so much for being here on this really beautiful Sunday. And thanks for joining us at the theater to be here for this chat, but also to catch Feast. It's gorgeous. I can't wait for you to see it. Can't wait to talk to you about it. And I'm also just overjoyed to get a chance to talk with these two and I'm just going to be personal for a moment, theater heroes of mine. Both were teachers of mine, Guillermo quite literally at theater school. To this day, I hold a lot of inspiration, so thank you, Guillermo. I did a lot of digging into sort of interviews and things I could find on the internet about about both individual sort of conversations of playwriting and then directing, but then also of your work together, both on Bloom from 2006 and 2018, and A Tender Path in 2015, and where you, with Doris Rajan, where you dramaturged.
No direct mail, maybe. Oh, gosh.
It was listed in their info. But in either case, I'm so curious, spanning over 2 decades and more of working together, I also caught this interview where you were both on a panel through Modern Times around directing. And it was stated in that panel that directing requires a collaboration based in trust. And so just to start us off in this conversation, I just wanted to ask, where did you two begin your artistic collaboration and find that trust with each other?
That's a very good question that I don't know if I can answer accurately because I've known Sohail's work for a very long time. I'm not sure, 20-something years, maybe a little bit more.
2000, year 2000 was, I think, first time we met.
Okay, so we met in 2000 apparently, and I've always hugely admired his work. I found it so exciting and theatrical and refreshing because it doesn't look like most of what we see in Canadian theatre. Certainly didn't look anything like what we saw way back in the 90s and 2000s. And I think just finally one day we knew of each other, and finally we must have said, hi, I'm Guillermo, I'm Sohail, I really like your work. And I think I probably said, I'd love to work with you. We have to find the right project. We have to find the right piece that makes sense for us to work on together. And I think eventually I proposed T.S. Eliot's The Wasteland, which is a poem that has troubled me since I was 16 years old. And that I have thought this could be theater somehow, and Sohail boldly agreed to do that, and we launched into an exploration of that, and that turned into this play, Bloom. And interestingly, it turned into this play because the Eliot estate said, no, you can't adapt The Wasteland. We wrote to them, we said, so we've got this genius idea, we're going to do The Wasteland, we love it so much, and we're going to theatricalize it. And they wrote back and they said, that's very nice, but no. Eliot didn't want anything to get in the way of his poetry and the reader. As if that is possible, as if it's possible to have a completely unmediated experience between a poem and the reader. It's not possible because we all approach a text from who we are, who we have been, where we come from, all the things that make us condition, control, determine how we're going to read or understand that text. And the funny part was, in the letter they said, a lot of people think that since Cats, we've changed our policy on this, but it's not true. And so Cats was what, just a mistake? Or because, they let them do Cats, but they didn't let us do The Wasteland the way we wanted to do it. So I said, well, I have an idea. Maybe I can go away and write something that is kind of Wasteland informed, and I wrote this very strange play that Sohail boldly and bravely did a beautiful production of, and that was the beginning. And since then, we've had an opportunity to work together a number of times. And really, I think the first thing is that you see, and I always say this to young people, like when you're in university, like look for your peers, look for your colleagues, because they're the people who are going to get you through your so-called career in the arts. They're the folks who are going to sustain you in a real way. Those people who understand you, sort of, who believe in you, who share your aesthetics and your questions. They're the people who are going to keep you going over 20 plus years. And that's what I saw in Sohail's work. I went, oh, I want some of this. I love this. This speaks to me in some way. It's not what I would have thought of. But it attracts me, and it compels me, and I want to get in there with it. And so over the however many projects, we have been, I don't know, working out what our mutual interest is in what the other does, I think.
Thank you, Guillermo. That's wonderful. Yes, absolutely. I think it's been a privilege for me to know Guillermo and work with Guillermo over perhaps 25 years now. I remember by the first time I met Guillermo, it was a Dora Award ceremony, and so I had this opportunity, the privilege to be one of the recipients, and it was Guillermo was in the audience, and then after the ceremony, Guillermo approached me. I never thought. I always thought Guillermo Verdichia is unapproachable. I cannot. It's impossible. He was a celebrity. He was really well known in Canadian theater, and I'm talking about 2000. So he came and approached me and said, "So my name is Guillermo Verdichia." I said, "Oh yeah, yes, okay, sure." So we met, and he said that I would like to talk. I would like to get together for like a coffee and talk about possibilities, and because I've heard so much about you. So it was interesting. That meant a lot to me. In that, being an immigrant in this country, and always be that vulnerability, that insecurity was always with me as an immigrant coming from Iran, a country that's not really well respected because of the regime we have there, not just because of the people. So it was really important for me to receive this from Guillermo, and his approach meant a lot to me and give me a lot of confidence as an artist that someone like Guillermo would get his genre to come and approach and talk to me and invite me to work together. So as he said, that we started with The Wasteland, T.S. Eliot, The Wasteland. It was interesting. He said, "Do you know the play?" I said, "Do you know the poem?" I said, "Yeah, I read it in Farsi." The original, when I was back in Iran, I was like a teenager. I read it, the translation of it. And I said, "I love it. I'm going to read it in English as well." So I read it in English, and I fell in love with the poem. And then that was it, that he explained it very well. We wanted to do that, create a show, a production around the T.S. Eliot's The Wasteland. And then, it didn't work. Eventually, we end up to do Bloom, which was a fabulous production. I think I really enjoyed exploring and working with that text. A beautiful play, yeah.
Thank you both. I love both of what you shared around the possibility and the constant curiosity one holds in a collaboration and on a project. Sohail, in a conversation you had with Intermission Magazine, you spoke exactly to that around how theater opens windows of possibilities. And so I wanted to ask specifically on Feast, what did you find opened up possibility for you in Guillermo's script this time around?
Goodness. When I read the play, it was interesting. Before I read the play, we met for a drink. It was like perhaps a year before that your production in Winnipeg or something. Yeah. He told me about the story. Sohail, I have this play. This is the story of it. I was just fascinated. I was just like, wow, that's amazing. So I didn't say anything. He didn't say anything about it. We didn't talk about like a possibility of collaborating and working together. But it was interesting. I was like, wow, I love the concept. I said, can I read the play? Of course. He said, of course you can read the play. Then later on I received the play. I was just fascinated by the universe Verdichia was created. It was so beautiful and very challenging. I just read it. I said, like, what about the staging? As a director, first thing I think is about the staging. The concept is beautiful. It's beautifully written, but then I thought, who's going to direct this? It was an offer to me, but I was thinking about it. But it was later on that Guillermo asked me, offered, if I could direct this, and I was really excited. I got It was, really honored, to be honest. Yes, I said, yeah, sure. So, the universe, the theatricality, the non-traditional. I found it a very non-traditional piece, and conceptually very powerful. Lots of important concepts, I think, is in this piece. But for me as a director was how I'm going to stage this. Eventually I was, offered to direct this piece with Tarragon. Mike was so generous and invited me to direct this piece. So from there that gone through a long journey to really read the play over and over and over and started like thinking and dreaming about staging. One thing as a director for me was so important, how to tell the story clearly, specifically, and be very precise, and that's important. Because what is, I think for me always, what is said is important, but more important than that, how to say it. This is me. And I thought that I have to just really make sure I tell the story with clarity, with precision. And the journey started from there.
Thank you, Sohail. And that's something that over the course of preview week this past week, bumping into Sohail, that was something you articulated over and over again to me was, I just want to tell the story. And so that's something that I really hold, is that the precision of that. And in another previous interview, also with Intermission, you spoke to the resistance that you had at York University with naturalism or realism, or trying to find, as you said, the poetry in theater. And so I was curious, for Feast, how did you end up finding that precision and storytelling against the sort of magical surrealism that exists in Feast?
For me, one of the most important aspects of my work as a director is to work with my designers and start collaborating and talking to my designers about the universe we want to create. So the first thing, it was at least, I would say, 4 or 5 months before we start rehearsal, I start communicating with my set designer, because the set is really important. Some of you have seen the show, or you're going to see it. You notice that Guillermo proposes like a lot of shifts from one continent to the next, from one local to another local, and it's very quick. I think we have to keep the rhythm. You cannot just take your time and have a naturalistic, a room and change things, things. And, even sometimes he makes it very clear, seamlessly from this place to that. And I say, okay, how I'm going to do it? Seamlessly from Canada, for example, to Africa or Beirut. So that's why I started talking to Caitlin, KK, set designer, because I collaborated with her before. So about like 5 months, as I said, like before the rehearsal starts. So countless hours of like talk back and forth, dreaming. And she was asking me, Sohail, what do you feel? Just give me a hunch. And I was saying, sure, I give you a hunch. And the hunch was glass window, because the play, I think there's a few specific moments talks about windows. Glass, hotel window. That was the thought, and I communicated with Caitlin, and we went back and forth, and I was very clear. I said, Caitlin, we have to tell the story with clarity. That's what we have to do, and that's why I told her what I was thinking, just how jump from one location to the next, shifts and all these things. And eventually, she came up with this remarkable set that opened up all these possibilities. But again, it wasn't just, from the beginning, it wasn't that easy. No, we have the set. Now we had to really use the set, these glass, the windows, with precision, with clarity. And then, later on that I started my communication with my lighting designers, because two design elements are very important to me as a director, is a sound and lighting. I'm not saying set is not important, but again, or costume are all important. But again, my main vocabulary is about around sound and lighting, you know, and then my communication with Thomas, our sound designer, because I've collaborated with him about perhaps 25 productions in the past, you know, since 2002. Yeah. So we have established that common vocabulary, and so.
I'm just thinking, did you give Thomas his first job as a sound designer?
Yes.
It's a very funny story. I'll tell it after. Carry on. Sorry.
Yeah, it was in 2002. That was the first time that, you know, yeah, he approached me. He said, "I want to design for theater, you know, so can I work with you?" And it was a summer work production in 2002, and we started from there. And now he is a master. He's a great dramaturg. He's not just a sound designer. I think he has a very good understanding of theater. Very good interest. Sometimes he makes some propositions that I said, wow, like it's coming from a sound designer, but it's so precise, so clear. So it's been a joy working with this remarkable artist. Yeah.
Thank you, Sohail. Guillermo, did you want to share this story?
Oh, it might not make sense to people, but Thomas said you wanted to work with you, and he appeared just before rehearsal started and handed you a CD full of all the sound cues for the play. So typically what happens is you watch rehearsals and see what it's going, and you sort of go, oh, we could do this here, we'll have this kind of thing here, we'll put this kind of music in there. And you test it out, and you test it out, and you revise, and you keep making changes and making changes and making changes until you finally open the show and you can't keep making changes or discovering new things. But Thomas Thomas came from the music world, and so he handed Sohail a finished set of sound for the play before they'd even started rehearsals. And Sohail went, oh no, you have to come to rehearsals, and we have to figure this out together and try things. And Thomas went, oh, okay. And that's Thomas. He came, and it was fantastic. You know, he understood the process, that it's something that's being elaborated in concert with all the other artists and all the other pieces. You don't just sort of submit your finished. It's like I walked in on day one of rehearsal with my acting complete and went, no, it's all done. I'm not changing anything from now until opening. You know, you don't know anything on the first day of rehearsal, really. But I just thought that was I've always loved that story. Anyway.
Thank you.
That's fantastic. Thank you, Guillermo. I had a question, Guillermo, for you around, this was a moment back a year and a half ago when we talked about Feast in a little office with Mike and myself, and I remember something that stuck out to me that I still hold to this day. You expressed how you felt that Feast was a play unlike any of the other ones you've written because it really challenged what you understood to be Western dramaturgy, or you broke your own rules. I remember you saying something along those lines. And I'm curious for you, what was that process like? How did you come to investigate that in Feast?
So there's a couple of things. I think, I thought back, over the things I've seen over the last 10 years or so that really affected me profoundly. And almost none of them, were your sort of standard play. None of them, like for example, a 6-hour solo performance that was kind of structured like hypertext. So the guy starts talking about something, and there's a key word in there that he jumps from that, and he starts talking, so the word bison, and suddenly he's talking about bison. And it was kind of like this encyclopedic performance. It was literally 6 hours. It was amazing. Not plays that go like, oh, here's a group of people, and somebody arrives, and things fall apart, and then there's a struggle, and then there's a crisis, and falls down, and it's resolved, and blah, 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 blah. Like, not a neatly contained, well-made play. None of those have moved me because I find the structure so familiar, it's virtually impossible to do anything interesting inside there. So I thought, I'm just gonna write a play where I follow my obsessions, and I follow my pleasure, and hopefully it will work. So that was part of it. And the other part of it was that the play actually began when I was invited to give a keynote lecture at an academic conference 14 years ago. And I gave this lecture at this conference, and I thought, okay, well, I'm gonna do this academic thing, but I'm going to do it as a performance. I'm going to do it inside a character. And so that was quite interesting, and it worked quite well, and people seemed to, appreciate it and enjoy it. And I thought, okay, I'm going to keep working on this. And it was a solo. It was me kind of doing my shtick. And I worked on that for a number of years and did it a couple of other times, and it was okay. And then I became dissatisfied with it, and there were problems and things I couldn't solve, like how it ended and so on. And I sort of abandoned it for a time. And then one day I kind of woke up and I went, oh no, it's a play. It's a play. It has characters. What am I going to do? And I could see how that would solve certain problems, and then it posed other kinds of problems because a play didn't allow me to do things I was interested in, like break the fourth wall and talk to the audience and break time and all sorts of things. And then I just went, oh, forget it. I'm going to do that anyway. I don't care. You can do anything in a play. It's just that we get these kind of structures in our head that tell us that's not how it's done. That's not how you do it. A good play does this, and a good play has this and that and the other thing. And in fact, maybe at one point a good play had that. But after 150 years of that kind of play, it's inert. It doesn't cut through. We go, oh yeah, I get it. Oh good. Oh yeah, hey, great. And I would rather I don't think that's what art does. I think art, it works on us in ways that things haven't worked on us before. It moves things in us that we can't yet name. We have, ideally, a play is an experience that we go through, not a series of statements or messages. People always ask me, what do you want people to take away? I'm like, if I had one thing I wanted people to take away, I would get a stencil and spray paint that on a wall, because it's way faster and way more effective. Nobody writes a play to say, war is bad. Nobody writes a play to do that. And if you do, you're wasting your time, because we know war is bad, and that's not how plays work anyways. They're not going to change your mind about that. But what's going to happen is you're going to have an experience, hopefully, if it's a good play like Mother Courage, that is going to trouble our understandings and our ordinary perception of the world, or our familiar perceptions. And it's going to work on it in subtle and complicated ways, and you are going to work on it. Howard Barker says this thing. He says a work of art should be an irritant to consciousness, like the grain of sand in the oyster's gut. In other words, the play sits, or that work of art sits in your consciousness like the wasteland sat in mine since I was 16 years old, and worked on it. And also I worked on my understanding of the poem. And eventually it becomes a kind of pearl, or it becomes something that is meaningful, or refracts light, or is beautiful in some ways. I think that's what art does. And we can rarely get at that through the ordinary, familiar structures. I think we need to learn those structures. We need to understand them. We need to master them so that we can break them apart, throw them away, understand how else we get there. I could go on about this forever. An artist is always working with the conditions of their time. And so 100 years ago, Ibsen developed certain tools and techniques to address the conditions and problems and ideas of his time. And at the time, those were new tools. Those were new techniques. And actors went, I don't know how to act this play. It's so weird. Nobody says anything that rhymes. And then actors went, oh, there's something new is being asked of me. I have to find a way to do this. And now we think these are amazing plays. But Ibsen's questions are not our questions. Some of them are. Some of them still are, but not all of them. And Ibsen's world is not our world. So how do we as artists capture this moment? How do we interrogate this moment? We have to pose new questions. We have to invent somewhat new tools. I'm not saying I've invented anything new, but I got to try to reach for something new to answer these new questions, which is, I think, what we're talking about when we talk about collaboration or investigation. It's like, this play poses a puzzle, a problem. How do we solve this new problem? And the thing about new plays that you get to see at the Tarragon all the time is that no one has solved those problems before. You go see As You Like It. There are 400 years of problem solving that we can go, well, in the 1976 production that so-and-so did, you know what they did with this moment? He ate an apple, and that really fixed that. Oh, good, boom, 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 boom. Not saying that it's all solved or anything. They also have to find new ways of doing that to make it communicate. But we're looking at something for the very first time going, I don't know. I just wrote it. So I'm like, I don't want to direct this play. It's got so many challenges. You do it. So between the two of us, somehow we have to figure out how are we going to do this thing that I have proposed. What was the question?
That's so perfect.
Yeah.
That was fantastic. Thank you, Guillermo.
May I add something to this? Collaboration.
Yeah.
Such an important thing. That's really, I consider myself a collaborator. Mm-hmm. And everybody knows in this community, this is like, I'll be honest, I hope I'm telling the truth. I don't have a big ego. I listen, I collaborate. It's always, I say, it's not about me or about you, it's about the work. Yeah. And when it comes to with Guillermo for this piece, collaboration continues. So I want to acknowledge that. So I wasn't the director and say, you stay away, that's a new play. It's a very important play. And I always was like a bit hesitant, like, do I capture the essence of this play or not? So I just wanted to have Guillermo be involved. I was talking to him, we were communicating. He came to see one of our final rehearsals, the first run we had. So I think it's important because this is a new play. It's been tested like a premiere. It's like a Toronto premiere, I thought just read it. And Tarragon, that's the mandate, new play development, Canadian play. So I think it was very important for me to make sure that the story set is told clearly. Mm-hmm. And I always just was like, even Guillermo made some proposition, but some scenes, approaches. So I think that's important. Collaboration is not about me, and even perhaps eventually it's not about him either. No, it's about the work.
No. It becomes something bigger because there's so many people,
that's right, yeah.
So many conditions that weigh on every production, right? It's even though it's been produced once before, this feels completely like it's new.
Right.
It's different. Yeah. It's not the same group. It's not ready-made. You change a factor. You change the space that you're in. You change the neighborhood you're in. I often say, put a business person with a suit and an attaché case on stage at Queen and Ossington, and that's going to mean one thing. Put that same actor in that same suit with that same business case in the same lighting on stage at the Bluma Appel, and that figure is going to resonate differently. Because the people in the audience have a very different relationship to that figure.
That's right.
So everything is in constant sort of flux, and the job is to try and figure out, is this working at this moment with this group of people, for this group of people, in this space, under these conditions? Oh my God, how can we know? I don't know, I think so, we're close. Yeah. And to keep talking and going, I hope so, I think so, I trust you.
Just another example, last year, I directed Monster by Daniel McIver, a beautiful piece. It was interesting because Monster was produced over 20 years ago, and McIver himself played, and the fabulous job was like a hit, And when I was talking to him, and he said Sohail, I trust you, take your... Because he examined it, it was proven. The play was amazing. So, and it was interesting. Said, no, you are free. Even he didn't get a chance to come and see. He was in Halifax to come and see the rehearsal. But this situation with this play is different because that's the first time. Yeah, in 10 years, somebody else can take this piece and do whatever he wants to do with it. He might have played it, but now is a premiere, and that's important. That's important to make sure that the collaboration is there. The story's been said again. I'm repeating myself with clarity, and so it was so important that we have been talking. So it's not like I'm standing here just by myself as a director creating this thing. Of course, I created the foundation, the design, the concept, working a lot with the actors, but. We keep, even right now, we haven't finished it. We have another preview. Yeah. We're going to check in always like making sure, polishing, improving the work. So.
Thank you both for those, to use your language, pearls of knowledge. It was really, I hope we get to really quote that. It's really quite beautiful. There was a quote as well from you, Guillermo, from the Forum for Inter-America Research. There was an academic setting where Marcus Hyde asked you questions about your play. And I wanted to ask you specifically, he mentioned and asked you a question around how your plays deal with questions of power, asymmetries in society, and talked about forms of representation. You answered a really beautiful answer of, I am most interested in the politics of representation. Gave an example from Ali and The Axis of Evil, around how in that play they used specifically sort of interventions of representation that were against stereotypes of how Arabs were being presented in mainstream media. And so I wanted to ask you, for Feast, what was your intervention?
Well, I think the thing is that I've sort of, I'm a very privileged person. I live in North America. I'm white. I'm male. I'm straight. So that grants me a whole lot of privilege in many ways. But at the same time, I'm an immigrant. I was born in Latin America, and so I have a heart in Latin America and a heart in North America. I look in both directions, and so I think that allows me sometimes to consider things from to some extent the perspective of the global South, and to think, oh well, this might look really good here, but in fact, for much of the world or most of the world, it's not so great. So that's always kind of a tension in my thinking or in my daydreaming or whatever. And so in this play that is in some ways about globalization, I of course had to consider the ways in which globalization affects all of us, but it affects us differently. We don't all reap the benefits of the globalized world. And so there are voices in the play that really push back. I'm not so much concerned about representation in this case. With Ali and Ali, it was like we used to say with my colleagues, Marcus and Kamyar, you only ever see two kinds of Arabs. You see maniacs and victims, and in North America. You never see any of the highly intelligent, democracy-loving, activist, Democrats and intellectuals, shall we say, of the Arab world. You see wailing mothers and people firing Kalashnikovs or something. And so we wanted to contest that and offer a different vision. In this play, there is the figure of Emeka, who is this single dad. He's a Nigerian business person. And what I really paid attention to there was his conditions, I think. Here's this super competent, highly skilled person under these conditions. We like to think, I'm my own person. I can do, my agency. I can accomplish whatever I set my mind to and so on. And to some extent, yes, that's true. But there is a reality that we live inside structures that don't always allow us to accomplish whatever we'd like to accomplish. And certainly that applies really strongly for some people more than others. And I think that's the figure in the play who really pushes that, if you will, the person who says, who would I be if I was elsewhere in the globe? Or what might I be capable of if my conditions allowed me to flourish? Because our conditions don't always allow us to flourish. And it's not just socioeconomically, it can be spiritually, it can be emotionally, it can be all those things.
Thank you, Guillermo.
Yeah.
And Sohail, similarly, there was an interview where you spoke about how identity is something you wrestle with and resist with, but at the same time celebrate. A lot of your work through modern times and beyond has been intercultural by nature, but also that it doesn't necessarily pigeonhole any actor or collaborator to specifically speak on behalf of their identity politics. So I wanted to ask you, how did your work in intercultural theater evolve and blossom through the ages?
Wow, what a great question. Just coming from Iran, I was born in Iran, of course. I was 28 years old that I fled my homeland because of that ideological regime and that Islamic revolution that devastated my life and my family, and some of my family members were executed because they were religiously, they were not Muslim, they were Baha'is. That's a background of my background, my family background. So it was interesting, that experience, witnessing that, as I said, the ideological regime. And that's, that revolution just changed a lot, just changed my mind. I just been always in the back of my mind, why, what is this? Who are we? You know, when I talk about, like, you know, I personally started to experience racism, even in my homeland, because I was like a religious minority. We were not accepted. So I think that's why my perception of identity and so it's really changed. It's not like, you know, for example, like just, okay, the white people are the only racist. No, I think I experienced racism back home. So the whole concept of identity, I think that's, it's important, and especially like the way Guillermo explored it is remarkable. But at the same time for me is, I am as a person, as an artist, I am more interested in our collective human identity than the individual. That's why I just like really, I don't think, I personally consider myself a person as like a multi-identity, like not just one identity, a singular identity. I have always has issues with it. So I have one identity and that's it. It's my religion or my nationality or whatever. Because again, I learned a lot during the Islamic Revolution in Iran. So that's why I am really interested in our human identity. We are a common human identity. Then that it becomes only like one thing. I am a Muslim, I'm a Baha'i, I'm a Jew, I am an Iranian, I'm like, you know, American. I just like, for some reason, I'm not interested, I'm not attracted to that, like a singular, choiceless identity, I call it. It becomes like a choiceless. Yeah, I was born with this religion, I was born in, you know, with this nationality, and all of a sudden becomes central to everything. That's why I have issues with it. That's why, as I said, the concept of identity is very important, but again, I look at it a different way. And I just want to sometimes make sure, like, the identities, we are different. We are different. We have to celebrate our differences. But I want to make sure that, again, in my work, my dream is our differences wouldn't get in the way of bringing us together as humanity. What is happening around the world, and that's why this play is so meaningful. That's why I love this play. Again, yeah, like we are not in a safe place anymore. This is what is happening to us, to our world, to our universe. Is very strange. It's very dangerous. I would say it's dangerous. Like, you know, if we don't take care of, you know, again, this play is about that again. Like, you know, we have to do something. If we have to, is a wake up call. This play is a very cautionary. Just remind us, look, what we have created is not safe. Is not good. Is not good. So that's, if I answer your question, that's the idea for me. My approach, my approach to identity, the concept of identity. It's like more. Yes. That's what I explained.
Thank you, Sohail. It was in the post-marginal conference that, through modern times, that you both on that panel expressed that I wanted to share with you all. I think it was through you, Guillermo, that you expressed that diversity actually proposes togetherness, and difference is where it proposes sort of splinters of otherness in society. And I do feel, apologies.
Yeah, although, you know, I think it's very important to recognize our differences, and that differences, we don't want to erase our differences.
Absolutely.
But what we need to do is become, expert in negotiating that and making room for that, rather than trying to equalize or flatten. And, lots of people have said this much better than I. But I think one of the things I always loved about Sohail's work is that it was very inclusive. It was incredibly diverse at a time when that was still like a big problem. Like, oh my God, where are we going to get these actors who are going to, and of course they were everywhere. You just need to hire them. And Sohail's work looked like the city I lived in. It looked like the planet I moved in. not like some, reflection of historical privilege, which most stages in Toronto looked like. They were all white folks. Or it was an apartheid regime where it was like all white folks, and then you had one play that was for the brown people. It was like, but you go to my kid's school, and there are 78 languages, and there's, like this incredible mix. You get on the subway, it's an incredible mix. You go walk down the street, it's an extraordinary mix of experiences, histories, backgrounds, races. But you go to the theater, and what do you know? The world depicted on stage is monochromatic. And, Sohail did it without making a giant fuss, shall we say, about it, because Sohail has an inclusive vision of, what it means to be a citizen, of what it means to be human, and of what it means to represent.
Thank you. It makes me think of as well how in different parts of interviews or in this conversation, there was a moment where you expressed in a specific chat with an interviewer around how actors say to you, "Oh my goodness, this is so scary to work in your plays because there's nowhere to hide." And similarly, in some of your plays, you talk about the precision and the way that, there's no hiding from the truth in your plays. And so I'm curious about that little bit of mischief, about like not allowing, how do you create that path so that folks can't hide, and what does that do for your theater and your process?
I think even you see it in this piece, in my theater, or this might be too much, my theater, but actors are the center. Always actors are the center of the image. Really, I see that in my theater that I like the set. I always like the actors as much as we can. Now, I'm not saying the set is not important, but again, the center is the actor. And I think that's important. And sometimes I say, trust it. You don't need a lot of props. You don't need it because you get occupied with props. Trust, yes, it's very vulnerable. It's a bit dangerous, working, in Sohail Parsa's production sometimes, because I take everything away from them. And I say, trust. And I think this is, because another reason for me, when you move this extra stuff, like props, elaborate costumes, elaborate set, then it allows the actor to trust the text. Just say it. And you can start to hear the text clearly when you're not making yourself busy with a lot of other elements. And but in a way, you can hide. You can hide behind elaborate costume. You can hide behind big set. And I think that's doesn't interest me. I say I love always to see the actors with their vulnerability. And vulnerability is always beautiful, in my opinion, I think. That's why I think that's, even in this year, I got a comment from one of the friends, I sent it to you, just came to see one of the previews, said the simplicity of it was so important that he could hear the text clearly. Because that kind of minimalist, approach to the whole production allows the audience to hear the text. It's so important to hear the text because sometimes you don't hear it. You go to theater, it's just you hear they're talking, but you don't hear the thoughts. Yeah. You don't get it. And I think that's it, perhaps, makes it a little bit hard for actors sometimes. It's they're scared, you're taking everything away from me, But I think that's intentional, and it will pay off if you do it properly. Sometimes, it doesn't work. Sometimes, I'm not saying always I succeed to do that. Sometimes, the actors, they may not get it. It might be depends, different training or the process. But again, that's the idea of it.
I love
He starts with things in rehearsals. He gives them, you can have a chair or a table. And then a week later he goes, okay, so let's take the chair away now. And the actor's what do you mean? You can do it. You can do it without the chair. It'll be fine. And sure enough, eventually they're fine. But it's
wow.
He fools them into a sense. He lulls them into a sense of security,
yes.
and then takes away their own.
And given that the text too is also one, I'm so excited for you all to see it, the craft and specificity of how those asides are given. You also showed that exact word that you use, vulnerability, from inside the text as well. And so I got the sort of time, thank you, Heather. I wanted to leave off this one final question. Through this post-marginalist conference, you both spoke about the need for self-suspicion in process, the need to constantly interrogate our own givens, our own taken for granted was a word. And I wanted to ask, is there something that you'd love for our audience to hold as something to be suspicious about in either the world or the play as they watch it?
What a good question. I have no idea.
That's okay.
I'm not ready yet because I'm still thinking about, like, how do we get it there for opening night? Like, I'm still thinking about, like, so I don't want you to be suspicious of anything. I want you to believe it all and think it's all brilliant. Yeah, that's a really good question. I don't know how to answer that, Jeff. I'm sorry. It's but maybe that's just a good question for you to go in and go, like, what am I going to be suspicious? Why am I suspicious? Or I don't know. What do you think?
If you
Be
can
suspicious
answer,
of his work. Be suspicious of what he's done. That's Ask yourself why.
if Guillermo can answer this question, I
apologize. And I certainly don't mean to be suspicious of the craft, because you are in for a treat, from the acting to the design to the writers to the directing, but in terms of a suspicion of the world we all live in. And so maybe next time I see you, we can have a chat about that. But with that, please thank me in celebrating and applauding our guests. Enjoy your Sunday and enjoy Feast.